If you feel it, you were meant to be here. Not because you searched for this message, but because something ancient inside you recognized it. There is a quiet pressure building beneath your life, a sense that what once fit no longer does. Time feels strange. Old desires are dissolving. You can't explain it, but you know something is ending. This isn't fear, it's remembrance. Before 2026 arrives, a hidden chapter is closing, and not everyone can feel it. But you can, and that's because what's ending is not your life. It's the version of you that was never meant to last. Endings rarely announce themselves with noise, and that is what makes them so easy to misunderstand. They don't arrive as explosions or clear decisions, they come as a quiet loosening, a soft detachment, a sense that the shape of your life no longer fits the way it once did. You might notice yourself going through familiar motions without feeling fully inside them, or waking up with a strange neutrality toward things that once mattered deeply. This is not apathy, and it is not depression, it is completion. Something has reached the end of its usefulness, and instead of collapsing all at once, it is gently dissolving so you don't have to break with it. You may feel guilty for this. You may wonder why you're no longer excited, why certain ambitions feel heavy, or why conversations that once energized you now feel hollow. The mind will search for a problem to fix, because the mind is trained to believe that loss of desire means something is wrong. But the soul experiences endings differently. For the soul, an ending is a signal of fulfillment. It is the quiet moment after a lesson has been learned, when repetition is no longer necessary. What you're feeling is not confusion. It's the subtle relief of not having to pretend that something still matters when it doesn't. There is often a strange grief that comes with this phase, even when nothing outward has been taken away. You might mourn a version of yourself that hasn't disappeared yet, but is already fading, the one who chased certain goals, tolerated certain dynamics, or believed certain stories about who you had to be. This grief doesn't come from regret, it comes from recognition. You are sensing the end before it fully arrives. Time bends in moments like this. The future pulls on you while the past loosens its grip, and you're left standing in the middle, feeling both lighter and more uncertain at the same time. If you feel restless without knowing why, this is part of it. Restlessness is often misunderstood as dissatisfaction, but here it is a signal that your energy no longer belongs where it's been placed. You are not meant to force clarity right now. You are meant to notice what no longer requires effort to let go of. When something is truly ending, it doesn't demand closure or confrontation. It simply stops asking for your attention. You stop trying as hard. You stop defending it. You stop needing it to validate who you are. Before 2026, this kind of ending will happen quietly for many, but only those who are listening inwardly will feel it this early. And if you're feeling it now, it's because you're sensitive to subtle shifts. You are picking up on the moment when a cycle finishes energetically before it finishes physically. That's why it can feel disorienting, because your inner world is already ahead of your outer circumstances. This is not the part where you rush to rebuild. This is the part where you let things fade without chasing explanations, where you allow the silence to expand instead of filling it. What's leaving your life is doing so peacefully because it trusts you. It knows you're ready. And what's coming doesn't need to arrive yet, because first, there must be room. There is a feeling that keeps returning, no matter how much you try to stay practical or grounded. It doesn't come with words, and it doesn't point to a specific event, but it sits in your chest or behind your eyes like a quiet knowing. You might be going about your day, doing everything you're supposed to do, and suddenly you are struck by the sense that you're standing on the edge of something you can't yet see. This feeling isn't anxiety, though it may borrow the same physical sensations. It's anticipation without an object, a pull without a map. You may notice that you're no longer fully convinced by the explanations that once satisfied you. Advice sounds flat. Motivational ideas feel recycled. Even your own plans don't land the way they used to. This isn't because you've lost direction. It's because the direction is shifting from external structures to internal alignment. The mind wants certainty, but what's happening now operates on resonance instead. You're being guided by what feels subtly true rather than what looks logically correct. This in-between sensation can be uncomfortable because it doesn't reward effort the way old patterns did. You might try to figure it out, only to feel more disconnected when you do. That's because this phase doesn't respond to force, it responds to presence. The more you try to name the feeling, the more it slips away. But when you stop resisting it, when you allow yourself to feel both ungrounded and strangely calm at the same time, it becomes clear that this sensation isn't a warning. It's an invitation. You may feel moments of grief for no specific reason, followed by unexpected waves of peace. You may feel tired of explaining yourself, tired of performing versions of yourself that once kept you safe or accepted. This isn't emotional instability, it's honesty surfacing. You are no longer willing to override your inner signals just to maintain continuity. That alone is a sign that something profound is happening beneath the surface. There can also be a sense of impatience here, as if part of you is ready to move, while another part knows it isn't time yet. This tension is not a mistake. It's the pressure that forms when identity is rearranging itself. The old reference points no longer work, but the new ones haven't fully come online. You're learning how to trust a different internal compass, one that doesn't shout or rush. It waits until you're quiet enough to hear it. If you felt strangely alone in this, know that it's because this stage is deeply internal. Others may not see any difference in you, yet you feel fundamentally altered. That's because the shift begins before it becomes visible. Before 2026, many will sense change through external events, but you're feeling it early because your awareness is tuned to subtle thresholds. You're picking up on the moment before the wave breaks. This feeling you can't ignore isn't asking you to act yet. It's asking you to listen, to stay with the uncertainty without labeling it as a problem, to trust that not knowing is part of the intelligence of this process. The fact that you can feel this at all means you are already in motion. The ending is underway even if nothing around you has changed yet. And that's how you know it's real. What is ending now isn't random, and it isn't cruel. It's precise. It's ending because it cannot follow you where you're going. There are versions of your life that were built for survival, for adaptation, for getting through something you once needed to endure. They served you when you were becoming strong enough to hold your own awareness. But strength evolves, and so do the structures around it. Before 2026, the path ahead asks for something different from you, and the old scaffolding simply can't make the crossing. You may find yourself questioning beliefs you once defended fiercely, stories about what success should look like, what love should require, what sacrifice should mean. These beliefs didn't come from nowhere, they were necessary at the time. They helped you make sense of the world when clarity wasn't available. But beliefs have lifespans just like seasons. When a belief expires, it doesn't shatter, it fades. And the fading can feel unsettling because it leaves space where certainty once lived. Some roles are also ending, even if no one has told you yet. Roles where you carried more than your share. Where you learned to be the stabilizer, the fixer, the one who understood too much and asked for too little. You didn't choose these roles consciously. They formed because you were capable. But capability is often mistaken for obligation. And what's ending now is the unspoken agreement that your capacity meant you had to keep holding everything together. The coming phase doesn't require you to be heavier. It requires you to be clearer. You might notice that resistance is tiring you more than it ever did before. This is not weakness, it's efficiency. Your system no longer wants to spend energy propping up structures that are already complete. What once felt like discipline now feels like self-betrayal. What once felt responsible now feels misaligned. This is how you know the ending is real. It's no longer dramatic. It's simply obvious. There is a paradox here that can be difficult to accept. What is leaving your life is not being taken from you. It is being returned to the past where it belongs. You are not losing value, security, or meaning. You are losing weight. You are shedding agreements that were never meant to be permanent, even if they lasted a long time. The soul never intended you to carry every lesson forever. Some lessons are meant to be set down once they're learned. This is why forcing things to stay feels impossible now. You can't revive the old motivations because they were fueled by a version of you that no longer exists. And that can feel frightening if you equate continuity with safety. But safety is changing its definition. Safety is no longer found in familiarity, it's found in coherence. In being aligned enough that you don't have to argue with yourself to keep moving forward. If you're wondering why this has to happen before you fully understand what's coming next, it's because clarity follows release, not the other way around. The mind wants a bridge before it lets go of the shore, but the soul knows that some crossings require trust. The ending is not a punishment for outgrowing something too soon. It's an act of mercy that prevents you from dragging the past into a future it was never designed to enter. Even when it feels like nothing is happening, everything is moving. This is one of the hardest truths to trust, especially in a world that equates progress with visibility. You may look at your life and wonder why there are no clear signs, no dramatic shifts, no evidence that this inner change is doing anything at all. But this phase was never meant to be loud. It's meant to be foundational. What's happening now is not designed to impress anyone, not even you. It's designed to stabilize you for what comes next. You might notice a growing desire to simplify, to reduce noise rather than add more. Things that once stimulated you now feel overwhelming. Conversations that revolve around performance, comparison, or urgency drain you quickly. This isn't because you're becoming detached from life. It's because your system is recalibrating its tolerance for distortion. You're learning what peace feels like in your body, not as an idea but as a baseline. And once your body learns that frequency, it becomes unwilling to live without it. There may be moments when you feel called to be alone, not out of isolation but out of a need to hear yourself again. Solitude becomes nourishing instead of lonely. Silence becomes informative. This is the nervous system resetting after long periods of adaptation. For a long time, you learned how to respond to the world. Now the world is pausing you so you can learn how to respond to yourself. This internal listening is not inactivity, it is training. You are being prepared in ways that can't be rushed or observed from the outside. Your intuition is becoming more precise. Your sense of timing is sharpening. You're learning when to wait and when to move, not based on pressure but on clarity. This preparation doesn't announce itself because it's happening beneath conscious thought. It's being installed at the level of instinct, where decisions are made before doubt has a chance to intervene. You may feel unmotivated by goals that once drove you, and that can be unsettling if achievement was part of your identity. But motivation is being replaced by alignment. Instead of pushing yourself toward outcomes, you're being pulled toward coherence. This shift feels slower, but it's far more accurate. It reduces wasted effort. It prevents detours that look productive but lead nowhere. By the time you're asked to act again, your actions will carry a different weight. There is also a quiet strengthening happening. You may notice that things which once triggered you now pass through more quickly. You recover faster. You don't spiral as deeply. This isn't numbness, it's integration. Lessons that once had to be relearned through pain are now understood at a cellular level. You don't need reminders anymore. You've absorbed the meaning. Before 2026, this invisible preparation will be the difference between those who feel destabilized by change and those who move through it with a strange calm. If you're in this quiet phase now, trust that you're not behind. You're early. You're being given time to become internally fluent in the life that's coming, so that when it arrives, it won't feel foreign. It will feel familiar, like something you've been practicing for without realizing it. As this shift deepens, it becomes clearer that rebirth is not about constructing a new identity from scratch. It's not a reinvention designed to impress or prove anything. It's quieter than that, and far more intimate. What's emerging now feels strangely familiar, as if you're remembering something rather than becoming something. You may catch glimpses of yourself responding with ease where you once overthought, or speaking with certainty where you once hesitated. These moments don't feel dramatic. They feel natural, and that's how you know this isn't an upgrade layered on top of who you were. It's a return to what was always underneath. There is a deep relief in this phase, even if it's subtle. You stop negotiating with yourself. The internal debates soften. You no longer need to convince yourself to want what you want or justify what feels right. Desire becomes simpler. Boundaries become less defensive and more factual. You don't need to explain why something doesn't resonate anymore, it simply doesn't. This ease can feel almost suspicious at first, especially if struggle once felt like proof of effort or worth. But effort was never meant to be your permanent language. You may notice that validation loses its grip on you, compliments don't inflate you the way they once might have, and criticism doesn't collapse you either. This isn't indifference, it's grounding. When rebirth approaches, your sense of self stops living in other people's reactions. It relocates inward where it's less reactive and more stable. You still care, but you're no longer dependent, and that subtle shift changes everything. What's returning now is a confidence that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to be loud or visible. It shows up as trust in your timing, trust in your perceptions, trust in your capacity to handle what unfolds without rehearsing every outcome. You begin to move through life with fewer explanations, not because you've closed off, but because you no longer require permission. Your choices don't feel like risks, they feel like responses. There's also a clarity emerging that feels different from certainty. Certainty insists. This clarity allows, it lets things reveal themselves without pressure. You may find that opportunities begin to align without force, conversations open without strategy, and paths appear when you're not trying to make them happen. This isn't coincidence, it's coherence. When you're no longer acting against yourself, life doesn't have to correct you as often. You might still question whether this ease is real or temporary, especially if you're accustomed to intensity. But rebirth doesn't arrive as a high, it arrives as steadiness. It feels sustainable. It feels like you could live this way for a long time without burning out or shrinking yourself. That's the signal that you're not stepping into a performance, but into a truth. As this returns, you may realize that what you thought you lost over the years, innocence, confidence, direction, was never gone. It was protected, waiting for the moment when you could hold it without giving it away. And now, as the old cycle finishes, that part of you steps forward not to be admired, but to live. As this cycle completes, you may find yourself waiting for a moment that never arrives. No final conversation, no dramatic event, no clear line in the sand. Instead, there is a quiet morning, or an ordinary afternoon, when you realize something fundamental has shifted without asking for your attention. Your thoughts move differently, your reactions soften. You notice yourself pausing where you once rushed, choosing differently without rehearsing the reasons. This is the crossing. It doesn't announce itself because it doesn't need witnesses. It only needs your recognition. You may look around and wonder if you imagined the entire journey, because the world appears mostly the same. But the world was never the marker. You were. The threshold is crossed internally first, and by the time the outer life catches up, you've already adapted to the new terrain. This is why rebirth feels less like a beginning, and more like a quiet arrival. There is no urgency to explain it, no pressure to define it. You simply live from a different center now. There can be a strange calm here, one that feels unfamiliar if chaos once kept you oriented. Peace can feel empty at first, not because it lacks meaning, but because it no longer feeds on tension. You may wonder what to do with all this space. The answer is nothing, at least not yet. Space is not a problem to solve. It's an invitation to let life meet you without armor, to see what responds when you're no longer bracing for impact. Before 2026, many will feel the ground move beneath them and scramble to regain footing. You, however, are being taught how to stand still while the landscape rearranges itself, not out of passivity, but out of trust. You don't need to rush toward what's next. What's next already knows where you are. It will find you through resonance, not pursuit. There may still be moments of doubt. That's natural. Doubt doesn't mean you've stepped back, it means you're human while doing something profoundly non-linear. When doubt arises, notice how quickly it passes now. Notice how it no longer spirals or defines you. That's how you know the old cycle has released you. It no longer claims your attention the way it once did. This is the point where choice becomes simple. Not easy, but simple. You can feel when something aligns and when it doesn't. You can sense when to speak and when silence carries more truth. You don't need certainty to move forward anymore. You only need coherence. And coherence has a feeling. You recognize it because your body relaxes instead of tightening around it. If you've made it here, it's because you were willing to walk without guarantees, to let endings happen without forcing beginnings, to trust a timing you couldn't control. That willingness is what brought you across. And now, as the new chapter quietly opens, you're not stepping into the unknown, you're re-stepping into recognition. If this message resonates, stay with this space. Let it integrate rather than rush past it. And if you feel called, take one small conscious action to honor what you felt today. Pause, reflect, or share this with someone who might be standing at the same threshold. You don't need to convince anyone. Simply acknowledge the shift. Because the moment you do, you participate fully in the rebirth that's already underway.